Welcome to Tech for Founder. I'm your host, Panida, and today we're privileged to feature Rahul, a serial entrepreneur and a tech visionary who secured backing from 6 different VCs for his groundbreaking venture, Intervue, an on-demand interview platform. Going from 0 to 1 in just 4 months, he now serves 50 enterprises, embodying the essence of tech expertise. A keynote speaker with no plan B, Rahul's journey is an inspiration to all founders. Join us as we uncover his insights from conquering challenges of entrepreneurship to simplifying tech hiring. In this riveting episode, that's a testament to unwavering dedication on Tech for Founder. So, can you tell us about your journey as a serial entrepreneur and how you founded Interview.io to solve tech hiring challenges?
Got it. Hey, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for a great introduction. Prior to founding Interview, I was myself an engineering manager. I was responsible to build a team of 200 plus engineers, and that's where I took more than 3,000 plus tech interviews myself. Having taken, I took so many tech interviews that I ran into this problem of interview fatigue and my team not being able to cope up with work because the hiring was so much. And we decided to build a software to minimize the interviewing time, and that's where we launched interview.io. After that was launched, we found out that people don't like taking interviews itself, and then we built a marketplace of interviewers around it who are engineers from other companies who can help companies interview on their behalf, and these engineers are paid for them. One of the things that was there was, having taken 3,000 interviews myself, none of the engineers or even me in that case was getting paid for the interviews that we have taken, because it always seemed like you're doing something over and above work. So I thought this platform will aid the interviewers or the engineers who are coming in and taking the interviews to earn money out of making the hiring done.
Definitely. So it came from you being an engineering leader and seeing the problem there and making sure you solve it because you're facing this in real life as like with interview fatigue, which is super real.
Yeah,
And I think this platform is great.
thank you.
So you mentioned that tech hiring is often a mess. So what were some of the key pain points that you discovered while talking to 500 HRs, and how does interview address these issues?
Well, there were many. Firstly, I can bullet some of these points, but it might flow like a story. So, many a times my team used to take interviews. They would not share detailed feedback, especially when rejecting a candidate. They will share a 2 or 3 liner saying the candidate's concepts are not good, etc., etc. And that 1 or 2 liner or 3 liner would not give any feedback loop back to the HR team. And that's why HR team would never be able to improve on the sourcing quality. That was one of the issues. Second issue was, because of offer to join ratio being a problem, especially in India. You have to interview more candidates that you can think. I remember interviewing about 35 candidates before getting to that one select. And interviewing that 35 candidates was about 50 hours of work. Uh, if someone would have filtered those candidates for me, and I would have, at the end of the day, just have to interview 4 or 5 candidates just to get to that one candidate, it would have been a time saver, a super time saver for me. No one was there to do that. So that was the second problem that we were facing. Third problem that we were facing was, candidates losing interest, because all my engineers were busy doing work. They would keep stalling interviews for that next week or next to next week, because of which candidates would say, "Hey, I have another job offer in hand, so probably I'll go and join that company." So it would increase our hiring cycle to 40 to 45 days, and that was another problem that we faced. Last problem that we were facing was interview standardization. Even across multiple engineers in my team, none of them would take the interview the same way. And even after building processes, etc., there was always some gap between how one engineer used to take interview a candidate as opposed to another engineer. So I wanted to bring some standardization in that as well. Now all these 4 things are catered to easily with interview.io, because that 45-day hiring cycle is brought down to just 7 to 10 days, because there is no dearth of interviewers today. You can get 100, 500, or even 1,000 candidates interviewed in a single day, which means you can accelerate your hiring wherever you are sitting. You can choose parameters of your choice, difficulty level of your choice, and interviewers from a particular category of your choice so that the interviewing process is also standardized. So yeah.
Definitely, that's excellent. So, what kind of standardization do you use in interview to ensure that that issue of having different managers interview in different ways? How do you solve that?
There are multiple ways actually. I believe that the world has five different segment of companies when it comes to hiring engineers. One is IT services, then product-based enterprises. This is where your Adobe, Dell, Samsung sort of companies lie. Then startups, hypergrowth companies like Ola, Uber, Flipkart, and then FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. Or today you could call it Mang or Mana or whatever, right? All these five categories, engineering bar is different. And if I pick one particular category, let's say we talk about hyper growth category per se, within that particular category, if I am able to get in three, four scientific parameters in place, like to call them scientific, although they are pretty easy. One is the difficulty level of the round, whether the round is going to be easy, medium, and hard. This has its own definition. Hard questions are real engineering questions with at least two to three boundary conditions. Easy as opposed to that is theoretical or fundamental question. That's one parameter which helps us standardize. Second parameter is our hiring rubric based approach itself, which means if you're testing a candidate on one particular skill set, you can deep dive into subtopics and say, oh, maybe I want a JavaScript developer, but JavaScript developer has to be good with these four things. This that might be asynchronous programming, knowledge of fundamental concepts of JavaScript, or knowledge of the DOM itself, or web performance. Let's say all of these things you can tick mark, which is the third aspect of it. And the last aspect of it is in our pairing itself, where we make sure a more experienced interviewer than the candidate is always coming and taking the interview. The right category of the interviewer is paired, and whosoever the interviewer is already pre-vetted to take the interview round. So we never dictate the interviewers that they have to take the round this way, but we set the right key variables and fine tune them to an extent such that the matrix is in place so that the round can have the same decision out, even if multiple interviewers are taking the same candidate interview.
I see. So, there is some form of flexibility, but also customization towards the
Correct.
standards that you prefer.
Yeah.
So, so one of the challenges you highlighted was the lack of collaboration and data when it comes to candidate evaluation. How does interview streamline this process for non-tech founders?
Um, Sorry, if when you say lack of collaboration and data, it means the feedback that is getting that is passed on from the interviewer to the internal teams. Do you mean that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll tell you the history. When I have been an engineer, and today also I see a lot of engineers only write two to three liners if they reject a candidate. If the candidate is a select, maximum you will get is a 4 to 5 liner feedback. What we have done with interview is, firstly, the feedback is bare minimum 3 to 4 pages. So that's how long the feedback is. Second is the feedback is bifurcated into multiple rubrics, which means the rubrics are the same things that I just described before. So every rubric is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. That's one. Every rating has further got its reasoning why the candidate has got an 8 on 10 or a 4 on 10 or a 1 on 10, and it's in the form of strengths and areas of improvement. Further to that, if you're still not satisfied, you can open the video recording of the round. You can see the entire transcript, and our AI tool runs on the top of that, which will also give you inferences. I'll tell you what inferences is. Let's say there's a team of recruiters, and they give us 100 or 500 odd interviews to take for DevOps role. I'm just giving an example. Uh, and let's say out of 100, 80 candidates get rejected. Now we want to pass on the right feedback to the recruiters, telling them why those 80 got rejected. So we'll show them deep insights across those 80 interviews, and we'll say, hey, you know what? 80% of the candidates got rejected because they had no exposure to Docker, which was a must-have for you. So why don't you go back to your phone screen rounds and start evaluating them on the fundamentals of Docker in the phone screen round itself, so that whenever you pass on the candidates to us, the hit ratio is better. Hit ratio is basically whatever we interview, the chances of them getting selected. Second is these inferences are so detailed that you can even see benchmarking of one candidate across a batch of candidates. So that'll also help. That also helps recruiter to take the right decisions.
So there's a good amount of feedback for both the recruiters and also the applicants to ensure that they can improve over time as well.
Yeah, in some of the cases, so interview also has a mock interview segment where candidates can come and get interviewed. Let's say they are aspiring to join a Google or a Facebook or a Flipkart or an Amazon or any company for that matter. They can choose that company. We will make sure they are paired with an engineer from that company who can not only interview the candidate, they can also tell the candidate that these are the areas that you should improve in if you want to get into our company, and that's how the candidate can get the right feedback. And the candidates can also then get access to that report.
That's excellent. So, with a rejection ratio as low as 1 in 100 in some cases, how does Interview's platform ensure an efficient and effective tech recruitment process for startups and growing organizations?
So imagine any company putting out a job post on any job board, maybe a LinkedIn in that case, and they receiving hundred or thousands of applications. Now they don't have the time or the time to screen or the time to assess every applicant, right? So what we come and tell them is, hey, if you have 100 applicants and maybe you are going to roll out 5 offer letters, let us interview all those 100 candidates. And we will only take one, maximum 2 interview rounds, depending on what you tell us to do. Depending on what your interview process is, we'll exactly take that particular round type. And we will tell you out of that 100 candidates who are the top 7 or 8 candidates. You just interview those 7 or 8, you will still end up giving the same number of offer letters. But your heavy lifting of, not interviewing 92 or 93 other candidates that we rejected itself while interviewing saves your entire team's bandwidth. Plus, we accelerated hiring for you because you don't have to wait for 1 month long to interview 100 candidates. We can interview all these 100 candidates in one single day. So basically, let's say any company that puts out a job post on LinkedIn, etc., get 100 to 1,000 candidates. We go to the company and say, hey, if you are going to roll out 5 offer letters after evaluating those 100 candidates, you can give those candidates to us. We will interview them on your behalf. And we might as well interview them in a single day as opposed to taking a month because we have a lot of interviewers doing that who are engineers from other companies. Now, after the interview is done, we give those companies 8 candidates to interview, and imagine rolling out 5 offer letters just by interviewing 8 people as opposed to interviewing 100 people. So that's how the number of applicants are reduced, and it's a highly accurate filtering layer because whatever candidates we have recommended, we have seen 70% of them going through with the company and ultimately landing an offer.
That's excellent. So, am I correct in that Interview has their own team to interview? So, yeah. So, do you
We
have your
yeah
own team?
we
Yeah.
actually have a marketplace of we have a marketplace of engineers who are taking these
Uh,
interviews. So imagine a Facebook engineer will be interviewing a Google candidate, I'll give an other example. Let's say a Robinhood engineer will be interviewing a candidate for Uber, and so these engineers are working in other companies. So literally, it's democratizing interviewing. And if you are uploading a candidate, we'll pair it with an engineer from another company who will come and take the interview.
that's excellent. So, could you walk us through how Interview's collaborative coding environment works and the benefit it offers for both candidates and tech recruiters?
Yeah, I mean it's an in-depth coding environment. If you take any tech interview on a video calling environment like Google Meets or Zoom, you'll have to share the screen, prepare a coding environment or go to an online coding environment, right? Interview offers this within our video calling environment itself. It's a integrated environment with 50 plus programming languages that are supported. Along with the video call, you can run the code, see the output of the code. You can collaborate with the candidate in real time. Whatever I'm typing from my side will be visible to the interviewer automatically, and vice versa without sharing screen. There's a built-in whiteboard. If I'm trying to, if I'm trying to cheat around the system, I might be trying to open a new tab, etc. In interviews environment will notify the interviewer that this is what is happening, and interviewer can also mark the candidate as cheating. So it's really custom built to take interviews, and it has a facility to even inject import questions, whichever you like, and you can simply ask a question to the candidate while you are interviewing them.
Excellent.
So last thing that I want to mention it has an inbuilt feedback form where I don't have to fill the feedback after the interview is done. I can fill the feedback while talking to the candidate, while collaborating with the candidate.
That's perfect. So, this reduces the amount of time that interviewers would have to go through afterwards as well.
Exactly.
So many established organizations end up asking the same questions across rounds. How does Interview help create well-structured and tailored interview rounds to find the right talent fit?
I think that's a great question. We have seen whenever we have built a centralized question bank, which most companies try to do, those questions often, either would get, they might not be the latest questions, they might get obsolete because of the changing technology, or they might get leaked on the internet. They might get leaked on platforms like Glassdoor, etc., which defeats the purpose. And these companies then have to reinvest a lot of time into creating newer questions so that the candidates can be interviewed properly. At Interview, we follow a decentralized process of having questions itself, which means every interviewer, we don't know what sort of questions they are going to ask. They keep shuffling their question pool as well, and because every interviewer is paired randomly, the question difficulty level and the overall structure of the interview remains the same. But what type of questions will be asked, we don't know. So it makes it really random and hard to guess. These questions can't be leaked on the internet as well because let's say a company like Google is hiring through Interview, and the same DSL go round, might 100 candidates can be interviewed by 100 different interviewers, might have 100 different set of questions. So that's how, because it's decentralized, it really yet standardized, it really makes the process super unbiased and super standardized.
Definitely, that's excellent. So, as an entrepreneur who has raised funds from six different VCs, what advice would you give to non-tech founders who are seeking to raise funding for their ventures in the tech space?
uh, I don't know if I'm in a position right now to give an advice, but I'll still say one thing that worked out for me was uh, just act. Do not wait for anybody to come and tell you that, hey, you could have mailed that person, or you could have pitched to that investor, or you could have made that pitch deck better. The time is now, so do it, act now. And I think a lot of people miss the bus because they keep thinking that if I do it, this might happen, that might happen. Don't wait for that. Let the outcome come. You should act right now. I think most of the people who are young entrepreneurs, they don't act on time, and that's why they miss the bus. I think acting upon a particular thing is super important. Reaching out to people is super important, and pitching to a lot of people is super important because it will improve you as an entrepreneur and how to position your product better, and it'll also help you reach out to more people, and of course, if not anything else, build a network out of it.
That's excellent. I think your advice on acting on time is very important, especially for young founders, because a lot of they
Yeah.
wait until they're ready. But what do you think qualifies being ready for you? Is it just about having a product idea, or do you have to have at least an MVP, or what do you think?
I think it's super subjective. There's no one size fit all. I think it's super subjective on what you're trying to build. Uh, there's no strict definition of being ready. Honestly, people try to chase perfection. I think one quote that I learned the hard way was, perfection is the enemy of profitability. You cannot be chasing perfection at all. So even if you think you are going to push something high quality to production and then go out in the market and start asking people for advice or funding, or start asking them to pay you money, I think it's already late. If you think you have pushed something high quality, trust me, it's totally whatever you might have pushed to production as a first version will be total garbage because you might not have gotten that customer feedback early on that you should be seeking. So I think the first version, whatever you think, should go out to production. Especially if you're building a tech company, it should go out to production as soon as possible. So if you think you're building a ton of features, you're wrong. You don't have to build a ton of features. That's why a term like MVP exists. So build that MVP, push it to production as soon as possible, and that's when you start showing it to the customers and build using customer feedback as opposed to building in a silo.
Definitely. So, what did Interview's MVP look like?
It was super shitty, and I'm super proud of it when I see it today because we've come a long way. It's a blue colored website. It was a blue colored website with right now we have five different products, but back then only one product was there. With I remember rolling out this first MVP with only five programming languages, and today we support 55 five programming languages, and video call would also not work properly. So it would break, the call would get dropped, and this is what we rolled to production. And I remember reaching out to 4 or 5 very big companies and convincing them to use the product. And all I got was, a lot of backlash and a lot of, escalations in return from those customers. But I think had it not been that case, interview would not have been here. So again, pushing that MVP is super important. It was a super shitty version of what we built today. Super shitty, and we rolled it out in a month, but it was important to just roll it out, because rolling it out helps you get you to that production process, that release pipeline, that shipping pipeline, which helps your team align themselves better, and everything then is followed by an iteration, as opposed to it being a production cycle altogether.
Definitely. So what was that? Because usually these MVPs, you get this one feedback that changes your whole product. What was that for you?
I don't know if it's just one feedback. I think it's a series of iterations that you keep doing. I've learned this quote that which is slightly negative, but that can be connotated in a positive way as well. Disaster is always disaster always happens because of a series of bad events, and so does magic. Magic happens because of a series of good events. So it's a iteration of I think multiple iterations that you have to push to production, and after those multiple iterations, you cross a threshold where you can say, "Oh, this is now a product which is ready for the market and ready for the mass." And for us, I think when we launched on-demand interviews, for us, uh, I remember pushing. There was not just one release. I remember pushing more than 10 to 12 releases every week to production. This was a lot, especially for the customers, because they would see a lot of breaking changes every now and then. But I think it's also important in the early stages. You can structure your engineering in a better way. You can structure your pipelines in a better way to make sure your customer is as less affected as possible. But I think breaking things, moving fast is the only key to success.
Definitely, that is good advice. Break things and move fast. So how does Interview manage to maintain a recommendation to hire ratio as high as 90%? What sets it apart from traditional tech hiring methods?
So, because the whole hiring, the interviewing process, it's based on hiring rubrics and the difficulty level. Whenever we say the candidate is actually a yes, they don't turn out to be a yes. There are only two possible reasons, and apart from that, there is no possible reason at all. The two possible reasons are either we have taken a round more difficult or easier than what was expected by the customer. The second is either we have taken the round on lesser parameters than what was expected by the customer. Sometimes what happens is customers gives us 6 to 7 parameters that this is what the candidate should know, and internally they might be testing on another parameter that they might have not told us. Candidate might turn out to be bad in that parameter, and we have not tested it. That's one of the reasons. Internally, they might be taking a much easier round or a much harder round as opposed to what we are taking. That is where that fine tuning is required, and with these two parameters, we are always able to tweak it around and get to the right recommendation to select it.
So how do you ensure that you know that it's too easy or too hard?
We can, it's a very simple exercise with all our customers. There's a feedback loop where we say, hey, we gave this a yes, this was a yes candidate. Was it taken forward? And they tick mark it on the dashboard. If if that percentage is dropping below a particular parameter, we get in touch with the customer and we start asking them some relevant questions where they share their internal questions with us, that their interviewer asks, and what kind of feedback they give. Because every rating that the candidate has gotten is technical parameter based, we are able to go parameter by parameter and compare notes and see where we have missed uh, uh, evaluating the candidate exactly the same way the customer would have wanted, and that's how what helps us align with the customer.
So the fact that this is mainly for the tech sector and is quantitative really helps with the fine tuning.
Exactly. Exactly.
So with the tech industry evolving rapidly, how do you foresee the future of tech recruitment? And what role do you think platforms like Interview will play in the future?
I honestly think that the world needs a centralized platform to interview people. And I'll tell you why. Today, most of it is decentralized, and because of which there's one common thing that every HR, tech, or staffing company or staff augmentation company will tell you is hiring is fragmented. And the reason it's fragmented is because there's no one single centralized platform managing hiring. Uh, and because of that, you can't tell whether this candidate is a good fit for you or not because they are not vetted, because you are only seeing their resume, and technology is ever evolving, right? And every customer has devised their own requirements basis whatever they think is the best as opposed to what exists in the market. I'm not saying this will ever change. This will always hold true. But if there's a centralized platform to interview people, there'll be a centralized vetted pool of candidates. Imagine like a LinkedIn of vetted candidates rather than seeing the resume, right? So this is what I foresee in the future. It has to happen. I see interview building that. That's one. Second is I see a lot of this also getting automated to an extent, where I think a lot of these recruiters do a lot of phone calls which are super procedural. They ask a lot of questions which can easily be done by I don't know, a computer program or a bot tomorrow for that matter. And all you need to do is break that anatomy and feed it to an LLM model to get to that sort of an accuracy. And I can tell you, if that's built, it'll be more accurate uh, than what recruiters are doing today, and it'll aid the recruiters only to get to that right fit candidate before they are actually interviewed. So I see a lot of automation happening in this segment, and I see a need of a centralized platform which can, you know, uh, bring I don't know, some common perspective to this fragmented market.
Absolutely. I really like what you said about how you want it to be like a LinkedIn of vetted candidates, because it really helps you see the picture, because with LinkedIn you don't really know who is qualified because everyone's profile is optimized, right? So this
Exactly.
would be like something that has already been tested and people have been interviewed and you're sure that they've passed the technical requirements.
Exactly.
So, could you share some success stories or case studies from companies that have significantly reduced their tech hiring cycle and improved their hiring outcome through interviews platform?
I have a lot of them. I can tell you some of them from India. There was this company called Cred Avenue. They hired about 200 engineers through us. Normally, it would have taken them 8 to 10 months, maybe more. With interview, they were able to do it in 1.5 to 2 months. The only reason being, we would do more than 100 to 150 odd interviews for them every single day. There was a great success story. In fact, their engineering team was super small when they started with us, and super small as opposed to what they wanted to become, which also allowed their engineers to focus on product development as opposed to hiring. Uh, so that's one success story. There's another success story which is a different use case altogether, but that's there, which is with multiple IT staffing companies where they are serving different customers, but they want vetted profiles to go to the customers as opposed to just sending phone screen candidates with a resume. So that was another success story where these companies would source candidates, get it vetted through us, and then supply candidates to multiple companies, and candidates would make the cut at multiple companies. So that was another success story that I have.
That's interesting because in your second case study, it's because you're kind of a middleman to another middleman to
Exactly.
secure candidates.
Yeah. I really think having a centralized platform can aid a lot of companies and can help a lot of companies. Is actually counterintuitive. Having a centralized platform can help companies hire people faster. Imagine uh, just like how you get ready to cook food, you can get pre-vetted candidates who can be hired really, really fast. And I think that should be the future of this industry. Um, and I think hiring cycles need to be shorter than what they are today. Today, I can go to ChatGPT, create a fake resume by just giving ChatGPT a JD, right? And
Yeah.
with platforms like Interview, uh, I can really vet whether that candidate is good at what they're claiming to be good at. So I think there's a need of a centralized platform for the world, and it'll enable the companies across the globe to hire candidates faster in its true sense.
That's excellent. So we are running out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, and
Thanks a lot, Panida, for having me. It was fun interaction.